Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Alex, welcome back to the Ranchonomics Podcast. Glad to have you here again.
Yeah, good to see you, John.
If any of you have not heard, this is a series that we've done with Alex. From here, we will begin again.
Another situation like that I think happened, it might have been that same year. No, it was a few years after that. We were shipping heifers at the end of the season that had custom grazed at our place. So we had 333 heifers or something. And it was late September and they were done grazing and we were shipping them to a feedlot in western Nebraska. And there was one heifer that was too injured to load up on the pot load. And then, of course, there was another heifer who was too crazy to load up on the pot load and had jumped out of the corral. So I had to, I think the day after we shipped, then take one little trailer load, pull in on my truck out to Gothenburg, Nebraska to return these two heifers. And I was really annoyed because I wanted the season to be done. I was ready. It had gotten droughty. I was over it, right? And so I immediately start saying to Chloe, I don't want to take these heifers. You know what's going to happen every time I'm pulling a trailer, then I get it flat, and you know how and so I'm just like building up this negative scenario, right? So that day I start driving out. I get about an hour and a half from home, and boom, I blew a tire on the trailer. Which, my negative thinking didn't cause that, but immediately when the tire blows, I go into instant negative mode, and I text Chloe a picture of the blown tire. See, told you. Like, I'm just looking for sympathy because I was right. It was going to be bad, and look at it's bad. And I text that to her, and I start changing the tire and pulling things off, and my phone dings, and I look back at it, and she had texted me, and she had tried to text, I'm so sorry, babe. But it had autocorrected to, I'm so dirty, babe.
Oh, I love autocorrect.
Instantly, I just giggled. I just started laughing, and the situation was completely different. And I laid underneath that trailer, laughing, changing that tire with those heifers pissing on me on the side of the highway in south central Nebraska. And it was the best tire I ever changed, and it went the fastest. And it was all because my mind had flipped, and I didn't do it. It was spontaneous, right?
Right. Autocorrected.
It autocorrect, right? But there's real power there. Like, I don't know how it happened. I don't know what happened. But if you could learn to flip that switch for yourself.
Yep.
My God.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. Yeah.
It's powerful stuff. And I think what I want people to know most of all is that there are so many switches there to pull, right? Like, we all have them, and they take intentional flipping at times. I mean, back to the first episode when we talked about acceptance, that was an intentional effort on my part to say, you know what? I like myself.
Yeah.
I'm not worthless. I can't walk, but I'm valuable, right? That was intentional. I had to kind of fake it till you make it for me for a bit. And there are millions of switches like that. And this is super nerdy, so try to stick with me.
Before you go into that, though, for a quick second. So the first story on El Cap, that guy that reminded you of the snake, there's a certain part of us sometimes, and the autocorrect thing is a little different, but not entirely, where our emotions are definitely contagious, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've all seen that thing where somebody yawns, and then a minute later you yawn, right?
Sure.
Well, one of the things I think we're involved with Bob Palmer, who teaches his Zone Rancher course, right? And he talks a lot about mirror neurons, right? And how when you are around someone, right, you tend to sort of go to their level. And sometimes what's fascinating to me is sometimes that's a positive thing, right? You're around somebody who's upbeat and happy and they bring you up. And other times you're around somebody that's down and negative and they bring you down, right? So in that particular case, instead of you transferring your confidence and lack of fear to that guy, right? The fear got transferred from him to you, kind of thing, right? And our ability, though, if we can, and this is a lot of what he teaches, right, is sort of putting this under control. A lot of Bud's power came from he was always the leader, right? And he sort of learned to lead mentally. So when I was around Bud, chastise you for different things, that sort of thing, but you couldn't help but be better. Right. And I think we all know people like that in our life. You are somebody like this for me, where when I'm around you, it's like, oh, like things go up a notch, right? Things get better. And I think one of my goals is to be that person in my family, right? Sometimes I walk in the house at 5 o'clock in the evening and it's like, whoa, it's chaos in here. What's going on? But my goal is to, okay, how do we bring this up, right? How do we bring this to a better level so that we're all on? We don't transfer the fear, right? We don't transfer the sadness or the anxiety. We transfer the confidence. We transfer the, hey, we can do this, that more positive type thing. And I encourage people to think about the people they spend time with for exactly that reason, right? Because are you mirroring them or are they mirroring you? And boy, if you're mirroring somebody, make sure it's what you want, right?
Yeah, well, you're making me think a lot about my behavior in the house and how much positivity I transfer to my children versus negativity or shame or guilt or all the rest of it.
Well, but that's what we do as parents, right? That's and what a challenge it is, right? That is not an easy thing to do, because sometimes you come in and you're like, dang it, why? And it's like, ooh, I got to be a better person than that if I'm going to.
Yes. And there's another area I need plenty of work on.
Oh, well, we all do.
I mean, yeah, trying to talk a kid out of a negative emotion or a teenager out of a negative mindset. The force is strong with those ones.
And it's driven by so many things, right? Because it's not just, especially for teenagers, right? Think of you're a geologist, but think of the chemistry that's going on at the same time, right? Think of all of the social parts, all of the physical parts, all of the chemical parts. It's crazy sometimes what's happening.
Well, and I mean, I think that is a good example of anxiety, fear, things that don't exist, other people's judgments. I mean, that's a huge portion of teenage years, right? Is responding so heavily to other people's judgments. And you can also respond to your own judgments, and you can be dominated by them in a way that's completely counterproductive.
Yeah.
And all of that is not being present, right? If you are paying more attention to what you think other people think about you, you're not going to get very far, right? But that's hard as a teenager. I mean, I don't know
it's hard as an adult, right? I mean,
yeah.
We all struggle with this. It's a perpetual thing. It's maybe magnified there, and our skill level there might be the lowest, but it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. You're absolutely right. And that's something I think I've gotten pretty well used to myself, my body. But it's interesting that my concept of myself is informed by I've been injured for 11 years. So I don't know, a quarter of my life, 25% of my life is me injured. Well, I have all this other experience that is able-bodied that I still think of as myself. And sometimes when I see myself walking, because I'm not like a beautiful walker, when I'm walking in a big city or something and I pass a big plate glass window and I'm like, whoa, look at that guy. It's like, oh, that's me. That's me. That's not the concept I have of myself. I mean, I suppose one benefit of having a massive ego is that when you get shortened a little bit, it's still a really big ego. So
10% cut off depends on what. Yeah, I love it. Very good. All right. Well, let's keep going. But I think that idea of the sort of contagion of that, to me has made me hyper aware of what I surround myself with. And subsequently, one of my causes for being hyper aware of that is what I carry into my other relationships, right? What do I carry in my other interactions with people I do business with? What do I carry, into my home, that sort of thing? Because if I'm living in this absolute soup of, what I think of as negative or toxic emotions, you don't just detach from that and then walk in the house and be a good parent, right?
True.
You have to really make that different.
You got to manage that before it gets there. Yeah. No, it's absolutely contagious. And it's amazing, I think, when you see the power of that, when you see that someone changes in a positive way, hopefully you see it positively and not negatively. But I certainly see it negatively too. If I bring that to my kids, which I definitely do, the negative, then they turn negative.
I'm so good. I love it. Such a good text.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. All right. So let's keep going. Good. Because you got another story here that I really want to get into.
Well, this is a nerdy one. It's about a deck of cards and it's about big numbers. But I think it brings home the power that you have at your fingertips. So a deck of cards, 52 unique cards. You get it out of the box and it's all ordered by suit and number, but you quickly shuffle it up and, cut the deck a bunch of times. I think if you shuffle 7 times, you end up with legitimately random deck. And there's been a lot of decks of cards, a lot of cards played in the history of the world. There's lots of shuffling going on. And one would think that some random shuffle of the deck of cards that you create has existed before, right? So if I get a truly random mixed up deck of cards and then we go through and look at them and see what the order is, my mind says, well, that order has probably existed before. There's probably been a deck that has been ace of spades, 6 of hearts, 8 of clubs, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
It's probably existed before. But if you do the math on it, the math for the number of combinations, unique orders of a deck of cards, that math is 52 factorial, which is 52 times 51 times 50 times 49 all the way down. And that number is gigantic. It's insanely large. It's 8 followed by 67 zeros. 8 followed by 67 zeros. That's the number of combinations of just 52 cards. Just 52. And this doesn't even, it's like to try to wrap your mind around it a little bit. That's more molecules of water than there are in all the world's oceans. And you can't see a molecule. Molecules are tiny. Like,
there are a lot of molecules in the ocean.
There's a lot of molecules. I think in 1 gallon of water, there are 1 followed by like 25 zeros is the number of molecules in 1 gallon of water. And then you're talking about the entire ocean, but there's more combinations in a deck of 52 cards. It's mind-blowing, right? And if you run the math, not only are there more combinations in a deck of 52 cards than there are water molecules in the ocean, but it's actually 2 followed by about 25 zeros times as many combinations in a deck. I mean, it's just insane. It's like completely mind-blowing. And I said this yesterday talking to some folks at work, and they're like, well, but that's an estimation, right? I mean, that's an estimation of the number of molecules in the ocean. And I was like, well, yes, you're absolutely right. It's an estimation. So let's assume that they're off by 5 million %. We'll just knock about 7 of these zeros off, and there's still 2 followed by 18 zeros.
How I like to do math. If you can work within those parameters,
right?
Cut 7 zeros off, and it still kind of works. You're okay.
And that's just 52 cards. That's just 52 cards. So there's a new order. There is another order of your thoughts, of your actions, of your goals that will get you better results. Like it exists. There's another order. How many thoughts do you have in a day, John? How many people do you know? How many phone calls could you make to say, like, give me some advice? Everybody could get to dozens easily, right? And that's where I feel like there is power for control. You guys talk a lot on the show about markets, and the whole basis of sell-by marketing, for example, is recognizing what you can control. You can't control cow inventory. You can't control market prices. You can't control the packers. And as you go back and back and back, you get to Bud's statement of like, well, first you better get your mind right. That's about the only thing you can control. And if you can get that many combinations out of 52 cards, how many combinations can you get out of your friends and your family and your thoughts in your mind? It's mind-boggling. It's really endless.
And then go to how many combinations can you get in a market, right? So take even
right.
Sale barn and look at all the different possibilities that are there.
Absolutely.
I talk to a lot of people who struggle to fully implement the new wonderful things they learned from continuing education. You take ranching for profit, you go to a stockmanship class, or you take a marketing course, and you come home and you struggle to fully implement what you now know. Often the barrier isn't what you know, it's your own mind. Bud Williams used to tell us to get our mind right constantly. We know a lot of the right things, but implementing them often requires a new mindset. Fred Provenza describes conquering your own mind as the longest 6 inches, the distance between your ears. Sometimes you need to unlearn a few things you think you know. In the Zone Rancher course offered through ranching.fyi, Bob Palmer teaches us how to have an elite-level mindset. Bob has spent his career working with Olympic-level athletes, the military, and business people, teaching them how to work in the mental zone where they are most effective. We've all experienced the feeling of choking, Many of us know that we don't perform at our best under pressure. Many of us have also experienced the zone as a fleeting moment of brilliance when we perform at our best. Bob helps prepare us mentally for those high-stress situations where the consequences are dire and/or the stakes are high. He teaches us how to practice correctly to get our mind right. He has developed tools that allow us to consistently perform at our best in the moments when we need it the most. Life in the zone is better. It's better for your business. It's better for your family. Join the next round of Zone Rancher through www.ranching.fyi and lead yourself and those around you to a whole new level. All right, so let's keep going with this idea. So we are awash. The way I interpret what you're saying is we are awash in a world of possibilities, right? Especially,
Absolutely.
Those of us that live here, right? I mean, if you live in a relatively free country and you have access to the type of resources that we do, like there are so many possibilities. A deck of cards is a vast oversimplification, right, of the choices that are in front of us. So keep going with that, because that to me is a pretty powerful concept.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your frame, and there are lots of problems with this country and things we need to work on, but this is also an amazing place that has a lot of possibility. Now, you and I have a ton of things going for us, and I've had lots of opportunities, and maybe not everybody has those same opportunities, but everyone has some opportunities. And if you can find a way to focus on those as opposed to the things you don't have, it will certainly move you further down the line. I mean, back to my concept, at least, of recovery from these sorts of injuries, that you have some maximum recovery. Who knows what that is? It's there, and everybody has some maximum potential in their life, regardless of injury. And it comes down to what access do you have to education and resources and money and all these sorts of things. But most of those things are out of your control, right? And it comes back eventually then to getting your mind right and recognizing the things that you can move forward on. And in my experience, you get a lot further if you focus on the positive things and the things you're thankful for and the opportunities you have than focusing on those negative ideas. And that's a very basic situation where you can reorder your thoughts, right? You can come up with a different deck of cards by stopping and maybe doing an inventory of those things you're thankful for. Get a little positivity reset, and perhaps that will move you forward more productively. I know in conversations, I get very frustrated when I try to have a political conversation with somebody who's different than me. I enjoy that. I want to hear from people who think differently. And we start talking about the issue, whatever it is, something small. And then before long, somebody just jumps to, well, what do you think about abortion? Well, hang on. I thought we were having something there when we were talking about grasslands and grassland conservation. And can we focus on the things we agree on before we jump to the hardest things, the things that are conflict?
Most intractable problems.
Yeah. Let's build from positivity, start there and build. So I think we can all do that in our minds. Again, I'm no expert. I need a lot of practice.
But it is a practice. And the part about it, I think, and one of the things that stands out about you is you're committed to the practice. And maybe you were committed to it somewhat involuntarily, but...
Involuntary commitment, that's what I've got. Is that what
Yeah, well, I'm a commitment phobe, as my wife says, so I'm only committed involuntarily.
And an ableist. Don't forget
that's
that.
Right. All of the bad things. So. The thing about it is, in my life, I am surrounded by people, and I think of Wally, and I mean, go back to Bud when he was alive, and my friend Bob Metzger, and a whole bunch of people who, I mean, really are committed to, none of us are perfect in this, but man, committed to being better. And I think again about Viktor Frankl. I'm certain, he doesn't write about it in the book, but I'm certain there were days that were plenty hard when he wasn't where he wanted to be. But you certainly don't get better by not trying, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if your goal in life is to be happy, you're probably not going to succeed. If your goal in life is to learn and improve, then you'll probably always be happy, right? Because you're always learning. There's always more to know. An illustration, I like these outdoor adventures kind of things. We talked about climbing. I like paddling and river adventures and things. And a guy that I hang out with talks about a circle. If you think of a circle that represents everything you know, inside of that circle is stuff that you know. Well, then that means that the circumference of that circle, the boundary of it, is all the stuff you don't know, right? And as you grow what you know, obviously the circumference grows. There's even more that you don't know now. You've got a longer area that you don't understand. And hopefully people recognize that and continue to grow and expand.
And isn't that always the way with experts, right? You hear a beginner say, well, I don't know this. I don't know how to do this, this, and this. And you hear an expert who talks about the number of things they now don't know is bigger than it was when they started, right? You end with more questions than you began. So,
right.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I am very thankful for a family that's fairly forgiving and a loving Heavenly Father that's pretty forgiving, and just a whole set of opportunities to try again, right?
Absolutely.
Try to be better again on the next round. And I have tried very hard. And again, you're a good example of this, to be thankful for those challenges that come up, because those are often where the good stuff happens, right?
There's much to see in darkness. I'm interested, and I would do a little psychoanalysis here for you. So that grace that you'll thankful of from your religion and from your family, are you as willing to give that to yourself?
Probably not. No, not as good as I should be. How does that sound? And that's one of the hardest places you talked about, when you were talking about, loving your body and that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, that's a hard place to get to a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm getting better at it as I get older.
I think so. Yeah. But it is, I think, difficult for rural folks ranching or farming, that oftentimes you need your body or yourself to work to do things right. And when it doesn't, there's not a whole lot of fingers to point other than at yourself. But I see it in my kids, where if they're being really down on themselves, and completely unreasonably so, and you say, boy, is that what you're saying to yourself in your head? Because that's really harsh. And I can't remember if my wife said it or someone said to one of the kids, if you were talking to your friend who was having this same problem, would you say that to them? Would you say the thing to them that you're saying to yourself? No, nobody would. Nobody would ever use those words to criticize or confront their friend, but we use those words on ourselves. We don't give ourselves that forgiveness and that grace very easily. And hey, this is coming from somebody who's really good at being hard on myself. So
one of the things that I've found fascinating, this is a total tangent, but we'll go here for just a minute. One of the things I've found fascinating as a parent is it has given me a view into the way my parents view me, of course, and subsequently a view of, in my mind, of how Heavenly Father views us. And so, my kids, my oldest is 6, right? So take the learning to walk as a great example, right? Well, the kid gets up, tries, falls down. Well, what are you going to, you stupid kid, you can't hardly walk. What's wrong with you?
Right.
I'm not going to say that. That's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And I am returned constantly to the fact that I am no better than a toddler or a calf learning to get up and walk for the first time, right? We've all seen a foal get up or a newborn calf get up, right? It's awkward. It's ugly, and yet nobody is critical of that, right? Nobody would say, well, that calf's not very good at walking. Like, that's
right.
It's 3 hours old. Like, what's wrong with you, right? The same with your kids, right? And that's become the vision I have, the view I have, the perspective I have as I watch my kids learn and grow and try to do the most basic things. I've realized is the view that my Heavenly Father has of me trying to do what I think of as grown-up things, right? Mm. And our version of grown-up is, what we're aware of at this point is so ridiculously small in the big sense, right? That it's the same as a toddler learning how to get around. And when I take that perspective, it's a lot easier to be much more appreciative of my attempts, right? To be more appreciative of, I don't have this figured out yet, but we're still working on it. And it's true in the things I try to do. It's true in relationships, right? It's true in so many things. And I think as I get older, I get more and more back to I don't know if a beginner mindset is the right description, but that idea that I actually suck at this and I suck at everything.
Right.
And it's not bad. Like, that's not a bad thing. Like, the process is learning, right? And when I'm refocused on the process of getting better instead of the process of being better, seems like it works better.
Well, and I think that gets back to some of these early things of acceptance or presence, et cetera, is because you failed at whatever it was, doesn't mean that you will continue to fail. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person or a loser or any of those things. It means you failed at this thing that was defined as failure. Okay. Well, you probably learned a ton. I think beginner mindset is a good phrase for that, of just accept the reality of what just happened and then move on. It doesn't mean anything about what happens next. In fact, it may predict success next because you've now learned something.
Right. And the great thing about getting older is that we fail more and we see that, oh, it's not permanent. We lose girlfriends, right? When you're teenage kids, right? You break up with a girlfriend, like, oh my goodness, it's the end of the world. I'm probably going to die, probably not. There'll be another one.
Probably
in a
not.
couple of weeks. You'll be fine.
A good buddy of mine, his name's Ty Walker. He ranches up in the Sandhills. And when we bought this ranch property further southeast, that was a big step up in size and scale and management for me. And it was pretty nerve-wracking. So we put a lot of work into fencing and water development and the management plan. And I felt good about it. But the night before these 408 weight steers showed up, I was scared out of my mind. And I called up Ty and I said, hey, man, I got the fence ready here, but I'm concerned about this. And I'm not sure if we do this. And it was blah, 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 blah. And I stopped talking eventually. And it was quiet for a second. And he said, you'll be all right.
Perfect.
And that's what we do around the house. The girls come in and they freak out. And after they're done, I say, you'll be all right. And it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's absolutely true. And if Ty can sort of convey that to you in a way that's meaningful, because what's going to happen? Well, an animal probably is going to get out. And then you know what you're going to do? You're going to go deal with it.
You're going to deal with it.
Right. And that's how we live our life, right? Decade upon decade of like, oh, that crap happens and then you deal with it.
Sometimes you lose your keys. Sometimes you get run over and you're paralyzed. I mean, honestly, if you stop and can just give them equal weight, it's kind of life. Life happens. And I can't control that. I can't control the guy who hit me. I can't control all these other things. That's what I got right now. And the more you can do that, the better. Again, I don't claim to do it well all the time.
But you will be a happier person and you probably will be more successful, interestingly enough.
Well, and it all depends on how you define success. We're still trying to get Robinette to the level of profitability that's going to work long term.
Right.
But I feel pretty powerful sometimes about the great food that we put in people's hands that can transform people and the land. We just need to also make it financially sustainable so somebody else wants to do it when we're done.
Right. Love it. All right, let's wrap this up. Alex, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I have enjoyed getting to know you. The moment we met, it was like, oh, this guy and I are going to be friends. This is fantastic. So thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time today. Again, where do people get a hold of you? Where do they find Robinette Farms?
Well, robinettefarms.com is our website.
And it's spelled, it's like French, right? So it's E-T-T.
Yeah, ROBINETTE.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
And we do a little bit of social media on Facebook and Instagram at Robinette Farms. And there's some fun pictures from outdoor adventures. My Instagram is at @not_disabled. But I'll tell you, I don't like social media. And so I stopped doing it years ago. Actually, I was posting photos from that El Cap climb and I stopped in the middle because I was like, I'm sick of this. So there's a lot of old stuff there, but there's fun pictures.
Awesome. How was the view from the top of El Cap once you got there?
That's pretty incredible. Yeah. But it's interesting about El Cap. It's in this very narrow valley that has a loop road in it. And it's one of the busiest national parks. And so the most pervasive sound in the valley there when you're on the wall is traffic. You can hear them from thousands of feet away. You hear that traffic and it's weird. It's still an amazing wilderness adventure, but it's just a strange juxtaposition to have humanity right there.
All right, Alex, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We will talk soon. So you have a wonderful afternoon.
Sounds great. Take care, John.
Thank you for tuning into the Ranchnomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.